We have begun both a criminal as well as a civil investigation, as is our obligation under the law. Our environmental laws are very clear, and we have a responsibility to enforce them, and we will do so.
The word now from the White House: the president is angry and his lawyers are on the case.
Yeah, and it gets a little tricky, doesn't it, when you talk about working with them to clean this mess up and prosecuting them at the same time. Top Line begins right now.
Hello and welcome to ABC Washington Post Top Line. I'm Rick Klein.
And I'm Jonathan Carl.
Every day at noon Eastern Time, we're right here bringing you the latest news and analysis and insights, everything you need to know before you head out the door to lunch. And it's twitter.com/thenote if you can't get enough. Speaking of can't getting enough, give us number one here, John Carl.
Well, it's switch and go. Another party traitor takes a hike. This time it's Parker Griffith. Of course, we had Arlen Specter, who switched from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party and then got booted by Democratic primary voters in Pennsylvania. Parker Griffith, a congressman from Alabama, switched from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party in December, angry about health care and the stimulus and everything else. And Republican primary voters just threw him out.
There is no escaping the angry voters that are out there. If you're an incumbent of any type, Democrat, Republican, both in these cases, it doesn't matter.
Especially an opportunist.
Yeah, well, and that's what it looks like when you go from one party to the other. This one wasn't even close, by the way. Friends like these, another shocker in Alabama. This one, Congressman Arthur Davis, a Democrat of Alabama and a longtime Obama friend, was considered a shoo-in to win the Democratic nomination for governor, would have been the state's first black governor, but he lost, and he lost huge, as a matter of fact. Now, Congressman Davis had taken steps over the last couple of months to try to distance himself from the Obama agenda, but another example, being associated with Washington, is bad news.
Yeah, undoubtedly, but this is, I mean, we'd all been kind of moving ahead to the general election on this one. He can't get out of the primary. He did vote against health care. He had taken steps, but, you know, it's hard to make that. I mean, he was so closely associated to Barack Obama.
Known since law school.
Okay, next up, oil spill politics. The League of Conservation Voters is out with an ad just savaging Blanche Lincoln, saying that she is basically a tool of big oil. This ad, Rick, actually uses footage from the explosion on that oil platform that led to the leak. This, I believe, as far as I know, is the first ad that we've seen in a major race about this oil spill.
That's right.
It will not be the last.
And we'll bring you a little bit of that ad later in the program. But it is striking. A week out before that Arkansas, the runoff primary, Blanche Lincoln is in a very tough spot. To be this closely tied to oil companies, Bush, Cheney, and obviously now with BP, is never good news. And finally, sunshine bust. Word at this hour that Jim Greer, the former chairman of the Republican Party of Florida, is under arrest, facing multiple charges in connection with a wide-ranging scheme of misspending involving party dollars. This one actually reaches across the Republican political establishment in Florida, but one of the folks who doesn't look good is the guy who, for whom he was a political patron right here, and that's Charlie Crist. We talk about trying to escape party labels. It's going to be tough to escape this scandal. This is only getting bigger now with an arrest for Jim Greer.
Yeah, I mean, the guy is actually in jail right now, but this was Charlie Crist's choice to be the chairman of that party. It's got to touch him. By the way, he's also somebody who helped push Michael Steele to be chairman of the Republican National Committee.
Right, with credentials like those. Indeed. We want to begin with an interview that I actually conducted yesterday with David Wright. It's for Tom Campbell, the Republican candidate for Senate in California. Here's a little bit of what he had to say. Tom Campbell, Republican Senate candidate in California, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. And I want to start with a fundraising appeal you sent out over the weekend where you said, quote, "I can win if I have the resources to communicate in these last couple of days. If I don't, we will not win." Will you be able to get your word out? What kind of resources are you sitting on right now for this final week?
We've got enough, but we could use a little bit more, obviously. The question is, can we get the message out that I'm actually going to beat Barbara Boxer? That's really unique. It was an LA Times poll that came out on Sunday showing I was 7 points ahead of Barbara Boxer. For an incumbent Democratic senator, 3 terms, to be 7 points behind a Republican challenger is a tremendous development, and that's the news that we need to get out.
We want to ask you about some of the issues that are very much in the mix right now, among them oil and Israel. At the moment, there's a great international reaction to this event taking place in the Mediterranean when Israeli troops boarded that flotilla of ships bound for Gaza, presumably carrying relief supplies. Was Israel within its rights to board that ship? in international waters?
I think it was. Israel is in a state of war with Hamas. Hamas is the controlling entity in the Gaza Strip. Sadly, it is not the Palestinian Authority, but Hamas. And Hamas does not recognize Israel's right to exist.
But these were relief supplies.
A blockade is appropriate, or at least within international law, and the blockading country then inspects the cargo to see if there are any dangerous materials in it. Now that is standard when you are at war. Israel was exercising its right to inspect, but let me say there's a question of judgment here. You asked me international law, which may say, I think it does, that in a state of war, a blockading country can board a ship to make sure that there are no munitions. In the past, relief ships have been allowed to dock in Israeli ports. They've been inspected, and then the non-munitions are shipped into Gaza. So that was offered to this group. But the issue is, should Israel have done this at this moment, given the huge tension over Iran and the importance of keeping Turkey as an ally? And right now, Turkey is, of course, expressing the greatest reservations about what has happened, and may not be there, because they're on the Security Council right now, may not be there for the sanctions against Iran.
Are you satisfied with the administration's response so far, or should they take a bigger leadership role here?
It's a little bit early for me to make that judgment. Particularly in foreign policy, I think it's wise to go slow and not criticize the only spokesperson we have on behalf of our country in foreign policy, which is our president, until such time as we have more information. From what I understand, the State Department so far has expressed regret at the loss of lives. Apparently 9 individuals on the Turkish ship were killed. Several Israeli soldiers were injured. But the United States has not officially condemned Israel's action. As I said before, as a matter of international law, Hamas does not recognize Israel's right to exist. By its own declaration, is in a state of war, right, and a belligerent can do what they did. It's just a question of, was this the right thing to do diplomatically at this time? And if it wasn't, and it may very well be that it was not, then that sort of expression of concern is probably best done privately by the President to the Prime Minister of Israel.
Tom Campbell, I want to ask you about oil drilling and the reaction to what's happened in the Gulf. Governor Schwarzenegger, someone you've worked with pretty closely in the past, has said that this changed his mind really about offshore drilling, and he supports now a moratorium on additional drilling. On the other side, we talked to Carly Fiorina on Friday, your opponent in this primary race, and she said, no, we need to go ahead with what it is. I want to ask you, though, has this changed your mindset? Seeing what's gone on so far, has this changed your stance?
Well, it hasn't, because I have always opposed putting new oil drilling platforms off the coast of California. And one of the reasons is you're never sure of the technology when you have a pipe going down from a surface of the water down to the bottom of the seabed. There's a rupture possibility. So no, I haven't had to change my view, because I had always opposed new platforms off the coast of California. The question,
and what is Carly Fiorina getting wrong on this? I mean, let's get at that. With the week out to the primary, she's still saying let's go for it. We shouldn't let this one incident change
I think that's not correct. I think that one should always be open to changing evidence. And the changing evidence here, quite clearly, is all of the technological assurances have to be reconsidered in the wake of what is now the greatest oil spill in our history. So the technology is different off the coast of California, but the assurances that we are given here are no less open to being reconsidered. One point I would make, though, it's probably going to support a new force behind slant drilling from the coast, which I do support. The technology allows us to go at least 3 miles out, which is the extent of the state territorial water, and probably a lot farther than that, slant drilling from the coast under the ground, under the water, so you never have a pipe exposed to the water. I think you'll probably see a shift towards that kind of oil drilling, and some of the coastal commissions in California will be impressed, I think, with the necessity for that.
All right, Tom Campbell, Republican candidate for Senate in California. Good luck over the final week.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
My joy. Thank you, sirs.